Ladies and gentlemen, the Democrat Party and the left just continue to find new and ever effective, better ways to drive away the reasonable thinking, rational, somewhat well-adjusted American people from their party. They keep, again and again, day after day, behaving in ways that cause normal people, yes, I love the phrase, normal people, to just be turned off and turned away from feeling capable of giving their votes, their money, their time to the Democrat Party. We've been talking about it for a while. Something like 68% of Democrats felt like their party was out of touch with them after the election, after the inauguration, the beginning of 2017 here. All the while, these people that want to erase history, that have deep within them this desire to limit and control and kind of husband humanity, they continue to claim to be the most enlightened. Now, peace through violence. We've heard this phrase in the last week. An exciting week, right? There was that whole eclipse thing, you know? The moon, the sun, darkness, temperature drop. Really cool. It's awesome. Where I live, didn't happen. We didn't get totality, but I still love the event. I hope I get to see one that's total again in my future. An exciting week. All the while, Antifa as well, coming out openly in opposition to our Constitution, listing believers or supporters of the Constitution as those they are opposed to, and that they seek to achieve peace through violence against. So again, as I say, the left, the Democrats, who refuse to disavow Antifa, who refuse to disavow BLM, the Black Panthers, the more radical elements of the left, they won't criticize them. CNN fake news supports them. And again, all the while, these people who now endorse, it would seem, peace through violence, who have no problem with mask-wearing, bat-wielding, or board-with-nail-wielding anarchists, no worries. They're just, well, it's okay because the people that they're swinging those bats at and they're hurting and that they want to commit violence against, well, those are racists. So it's okay. That's basically what we've learned. The entire Democrat Party and too many, in the Republican Party have no problem with the far left, the alt-left, attacking violently people that have different views than them. We discussed this on the show last week. There's nothing respectable, or there's no credit, there's no import, there's no mass or content to the idea of racism or white supremacy or any of that nonsense. That's exactly what it is. It's all BS nonsense. But the fact that there are idiots willing and capable of getting out and holding a rally or exercising their right to free speech and peaceable assembly, and that we should then commit violence against them, that is absolutely asinine. And in the opposite of what this country stands for. We've heard that phrase thrown around, right, as far as refugees and immigration, what this country stands for. Well, it doesn't stand for violence against peaceably assembled people with different ideas, even if those ideas are abhorrent. That's the idea. That's the thing, is I picture those of you who are tuned in, you understand that. You have that understanding, that appreciation for the Bill of Rights, all of them. And you understand how important it is that they be observed and that we have them guaranteed to us. But again, to add to the picture that I'm painting here, each week, as each week moves on, and I say week because I come to you once a week, but as each day rolls on, and the headlines in the news and what we see from the fake news and the mainstream media, we see more obviously, nakedly in front of us, their absolute disdain, disregard, and disrespect for our founding documents, for half the population of this country, at least half the voting population, their general disdain for humanity, for the human being. And there are some people who might think that my saying that might be extreme, but I disagree. I don't think it's extreme at all. I think it's an apt description of people who believe that the population of the planet is too high, that we need to lower the population through birth control. Some of them, on the more extreme edges of this subject, believe in forced abortions, like what we see in China and in countries where population controls have been enforced. They want fewer human beings. They want less prosperity and less opportunity for human beings. We learned that during the Obama administration when they became openly against development of third world countries to a first world status because of the damage to the environment. these folks on the left, the Democrat Party, the base, George Soros, this movement against our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, us as a nation, as a people having the freedoms to be who we choose to be in all of the forms, ugly and beautiful. That's what we're battling. There's a group of people who see the masses of humanity as dangerous, as undesirable, well, deplorable, unmanageable, untrustworthy, stupid, feckless. The list goes on and on. There's no respect for us. We are to be managed. We are to be legislated into submission and controlled at every corner and given, instead of finding for ourselves what it is that makes sense to us and gives us the ability to cope and exist, we're supposed to be fed an ideology and a kind of a thought zeitgeist to follow and to embody. Otherwise, we become undesirable and unnecessary and expendable. That's something else I've talked about on the show. We've been expendable for a long time. And so, AJ, where are you going with all this after this last week with Bannon, with Antifa, with this, what we've learned about the organizer of the protest, the original statue protest in Charlottesville? There's a lot of gaming going on. There's a lot of setups going on. It's all this political back and forth. What I've seen and where today's show will kind of center around is this idea that whether it's Michael Moore or it's Nancy Pelosi, it's Barack Obama, it's, even George Soros, or any of the loudest voices, the leaders, the people out in front, the tip of the spear, so to speak, of the Democrat Party, of the liberal left, of that political wing that's in operation in this country nowadays, they put forth this idea that they have enlightened themselves. They've become enlightened. They're more enlightened than the rest of us. They have some deeper understanding and awareness and wisdom about what's going on. And if that's the case, then we have to, as I've said on the show many times before, look at the words compared to the actions. I would submit that socialism, even anarchy, because we find that anarcho-communism in Antifa, but socialism, communism, Marxism, that whole idea is the opposite of what we would come to understand or think of as enlightenment. And it's the opposite of what they try to define as enlightenment, with diversity and equality, cultural diversity, acceptance and tolerance. They've taken all of those words and all of those ideas, which in and of themselves have a lot of positive effects, and they've turned them into rules and regulations, just as they've done that with identity politics. There's rules about how we have to think and deal with people based on their skin color, their gender, their sexual orientation, blah, 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 on and on and on and on and on and on. And to me, as I mentioned, the show centering around enlightenment, what I picture the actions and the utopia of the left representing is a battle against human nature. I would put it this way, human nature. It's hard to define, but it's what we have seen over the millennia, which is war and evil and pillaging and greed and wrath. That's maybe the 7 deadly sins. That's human nature. And conservatives, and what has happened as a result of our Constitution and Bill of Rights, I would describe it this way. Conservatives, as far as human nature is concerned, they want us as individuals to learn ourselves how to overcome human nature, how to become enlightened, how to become that citizen of the free world who can exist without infringing on others' rights and be a neighbor and a citizen and a patriot, as well as all of the other things that come along with our lives, our existence in a free country. Democrats see human nature. They want to control it. They want to limit it. They want to, I've used the word before, husband it, as a farmer husbands a herd of cattle. They want to suppress human nature. They believe in that racism that's born into us. They're the ones who say it, just because of your skin color, and they say, just because you're white, you're racist. So that's one of those things they're being so open about. But Democrats and human nature, they want to be masters of humans. They want to be stronger than human nature. They want to guide it and control it. And they believe they can, in the end, correct humans so that they won't be so human anymore, because they believe human to be destructive naturally. And maybe they're not wrong about that, but the idea is that their way to go about addressing it is completely wrong. But they call themselves enlightened. They believe that this, what they call a diversity of thought, they call it enlightenment. They believe that they are the enlightened ones. But the reality is, it's the same old, same old. What ends up coming from their enlightenment is tyranny and dictatorship, actual fascism, or centralizing the power to the folks in the government and the citizens, the rest of the people not having any. That's fascism. Most folks don't really understand what that is, but that's what it is. It turns into communism. It turns into socialism, Marxism. Why? Because the result of all of those means, which is tyranny, dictatorship, fascism, the ends for the people are always the same that live under those types of government. What is the result? We see it in Venezuela. What is the result? We've seen it through Stalin's communist era in the USSR and right on through. We saw it in Mao's China. Starvation, mortality rates through the roof. There is zero freedom. There is zero opportunity. There becomes a caste system, an ever more failing economy, forced ideology upon the people. And eventually, for every one of these folks that have tried this, and I would argue whoever it is, China, whatever the level of socialism or communism that has been attempted, you have a collapse naturally that comes of community, of culture, of society. That to me sounds like the opposite of enlightenment. Thanks for tuning in to Blowin Smoke. This is AJ Gaynor, your host here on the Talk America Radio Network. We'll be back with more. We're going to get more into what is enlightenment. How should we think of enlightenment? Should it be something that causes us to become servants of people who claim to be enlightened? Or is it something that all of us find individually in our lives? We'll find out. We'll talk about it. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Let's dance.
How did you become addicted? A friend? Were you at a party and someone said, "Hey, try this"? Then you got the cold sweats and started shaking. And the more you did it, the more it didn't work. So you switched to the needle. Now you're a train wreck. Drinking, drugging, broke. Your family hates you. And you hate you. Get out of your hell on earth now. Call the Detox and Treatment Helpline today for immediate help. In many cases, your insurance may cover the costs. We can't guarantee it, but we can guarantee we have what you need to change your life for the better. Pick up your cell phone and call right now. 800-287-7891. 800-287-7891. 800-287-7891. That's 800-287-7891.
Let's dance, dance. Let's dance, 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 dance.
Welcome back to Blowin Smoke, ladies and gentlemen. AJ Gaynor with you. Today, we are tackling the subject of enlightenment. I hear you. What? Whoa. Okay, that's a pretty big subject for a simple, quick 1-hour show, AJ. It is, but I don't mean defining it and calling it solved and explaining what it is to everybody. I'm talking about the role that it's playing in our back and forth, our battle between good and evil in our society here in the West. I spoke last segment about the Democrat Party of the left claiming to be the more enlightened group of people, the elites, because of their enlightenment. And so I wanted to talk about or explore what's actually happening. What is the reality there? If this group of people are so enlightened and all of their ideas come from such enlightenment, why are all of their ideas ideas that have been tried and tried and tried again and always failed? Socialism, communism, dictatorship, fascism. All of these things have been tried numerous times, again and again and again throughout history, whether it's a monarchy or it's what we see in Venezuela, and it fails every single time. We spoke last segment about enlightenment having to do, or at least it's connected with, human nature and our fight to overcome human nature. I listed it this way. For the West, here, at least in America, the way that I see it broken down is we have our own human nature. We have human nature to overcome, and it's part of our existence. But in the political realm, we think of it this way. Human nature, conservatives want us to learn ourselves how to overcome our more human natures. Democrats want to control our nature, to limit our nature, to become a husbander or a governor of our nature, to suppress it. They want to master it. And eventually they want to try to correct human nature, which is all by itself impossible to do. It shows a level of arrogance that they miss. They just don't ever hear it or find it present in any of their thought or words. But they call themselves enlightened. They believe they have that key to utopia. And what we've witnessed time and time again in the reality of the world, because of human nature, it fails. The collapse comes. At the minimum, the collapse of community and culture and society. But at the worst, a collapse of nations, collapses of economies. And that to me sounds like the opposite of enlightenment. So to get back into what is real enlightenment, it depends. If we go to the dictionary, you're going to see synonyms. A dictionary says it's the state of being enlightened, so it doesn't really talk about it too much, but it gives synonyms, some of those being understanding, wisdom, insight, learning, or knowledge. Those are all contained or synonymous with enlightenment. But it can also mean having some kind of spiritual knowledge. In the Buddhist religion, enlightenment is considered a level of understanding that would release a soul from that cycle of rebirth and that reincarnation idea, I guess, if I can be so kind. But in this sense, I think what we're talking about, or my interpretation of enlightenment as the subject in our battle against liberals and liberalism, take three of those synonyms that were listed, put them together, and what you get is the beginning of a thought process. This is what I think of as enlightenment, a mixture of understanding, wisdom, and learning. If you take those three things and put them together, then what you have are tools to begin a thought process that leads to some kind of enlightening, or the act thereof. It's not a finish line. There's no gate. There's no bell that you ring when you reach a certain point and suddenly you're enlightened and there's nothing left to be curious about or wonder about or fear. It's about the process of moving through our experience, through our lives, and as we gain experience and knowledge and events, on-the-job training, so to speak, enlightenment becomes part of the package deal. I contend that for us mere mortals, we can't pretend, much less believe, that we are or could become fully enlightened. I think that would be too much. I think that if someone were to think of themselves as truly an enlightened being or soul, it's too easy, in my opinion, for that to become arrogance and hubris and overbloated self-love. I could go on, but the thing about it is it's foisted on us, it's thrown at us by people who are arguing with us about racism and misogyny and patriarchy and abortion and transgenderism and homosexuality, all the folks that are arguing against conservatives and the right and Christianity and the traditions and the ideas and morals that our country and our society, our communities were founded on. They feel that exact thing I was describing, that they are enlightened, that they can check off some box because they took a course or someone told them that they that this is what enlightenment is. They've been given examples of reasons to feel superior to the rest of us because of a thought process that has been crammed down their throat and that they've been indoctrinated with in our public schools and then on through our higher learning system. And so they have this feeling of enlightenment and believe that they really are superior beings to people who don't agree with them. Look, the fact of the matter is enlightenment, it doesn't come from a college course. It is not, how we say our doctors practice medicine. Medicine is a practice. It's not some finalized, finite thing. We're always going to learn more, and for every patient there will be a different outcome or course of treatment needed. I suggest that enlightenment and becoming enlightened is the same. It's a practice, and we don't finish that practice until we move on from this life to whatever comes next. You don't have to know what's next for enlightenment to be part of your life. Enlightenment does not come with tenure. Just because someone has been a professor of name it for 35 years does not mean that they are enlightened. It just means that they've gained lots of knowledge and spent that time sharing it with others. That's not enlightenment. Enlightenment does not come from a Nobel Prize. Enlightenment does not come from or an Academy Award or a Grammy. It also does not come with a pastorship or a parsonage. But where does it come from? I hear someone saying, well, AJ, where does enlightenment come from? It comes from experience. It comes from, let me sum it up this way. It comes from our ability to engage and become a part of and aware of the reality that we're inhabiting. What? I hear you out there. I hear voices shouting at me. What? What the heck does that mean? But let's read it again. Our ability to engage and become a part of and become aware of the reality that we are inhabiting. Vague, maybe, but I think that that's the simplest way to put it, because no matter what the subject is, as I mentioned before, whether you take abortion or misogyny or patriarchy or racism or sexual orientation, any of these things, they all come under that description of our ability to engage and become a part of and aware of the reality we're inhabiting. Well, give an example, AJ. Well, let's take transgenderism. What, less than 1% of the population? Even if it's higher, let's just pretend and say 3% of the population is transgender. Well, that's an important fact, and it's one that we need to factor into our thinking. And in that, when I do that, my thinking, I guess using logic and reason, is that for such a small portion of our population, we don't need to be at arms or up in arms against one another over which bathrooms they should use. In fact, I don't think it's something that should even ever see the light of day in a legislative body. I think if a business owner decides they want to put a special bathroom in or have different rules in the building there, then that's fine. Similar on this argument of gay marriage. How can we become a part of and more aware of the reality we're inhabiting with gay marriage? Well, there are a lot of gay people in America, higher percentage than transgenders. If they want to get married, if the state they live in wants to vote and decide that those folks can get married, I have no problem with it, because I've engaged and become aware and decided that marriage is another idea, institution, or subject that should never see the light of day inside a legislative body. It is part of a community and a society and a culture. And the fact of the matter is, because we're free in this country, we can go where we find ourselves most comfortable. And if you are one of those individuals who would not feel comfortable living amongst a community of married homosexuals, then move. It's not a harsh reality. It's not too much to ask. And so again, it becomes this thing that we have to work out on our own without the badges and the gavels and the guns. But that's the issue. The left and the Democrats, it's the thing that exposes them. They'll talk about all this enlightenment and utopia and getting along and tolerance and university of thought, or diversity of thought and diversity of culture and all of these different things, but they always resort to the badges and the gavels and the guns to enforce what it is they think should be, instead of accepting the fact that human nature demands that we all have that ability to be who we are and say what we need to say and live the lives that we want to live. They have to stop that process and try to force it to go in their own direction. That is how we know immediately, upon their professing to want a law, a regulation, a statute, an ordinance, enforcing their moral preference or lack thereof. That's when they expose themselves to be the statist, the tyrant, the dictator that they would be if given the opportunity to have more influence over top of us. It's not enlightenment to suppress another individual because they do not agree with your worldview or political view. It's not enlightenment. I want us as a population, whoever is within the sound of my voice, to recognize and to share and to hopefully influence those around us and those around you, to recognize that we don't have an enlightened individual. There is no Jesus amongst us. There is no one individual for the masses, for the millions and the billions, to teach and correct behavior and to wipe out risk and take away all the hate and the anger and the hurt feelings and the evil. It just does not exist. That is a way to sum up this segment. Is there a quick definition of enlightenment for our American culture, for Western civilization? What level of enlightenment do we or could we possess as a people? I believe we do possess a level of enlightenment, and I think it comes from the very founding. The Enlightenment is embodied in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. The true enlightenment is that ability to come to terms with what we find, nature, human nature, the nature of the times we've been born into, the era, the modern reality, the ability to accept it and embrace it and understand that it's the only way, it's the best way, imperfect as it is, harsh as it is, the need of the individual human to be free, to have every one of the listed inalienable rights given to us by nature or by God, whatever you prefer. As soon as there's an individual who wants to infringe upon that fact or that reality or that idea or belief, they expose themselves to be the enemy of potential, the enemy of freedom, the enemy of liberty, the enemy of what has given this planet more than anything else in the history of mankind. That is capitalism and a free society, the free exchange of ideas. All of the results of the enlightenment of our forefathers, however awful of people they may have been, if we could bring them back to life today. Maybe we'd hate them, but they had it right then, and we're still enjoying just how right they had it. Stay tuned, we'll be back with more after this. This is Blowin Smoke on the Talk America Radio Network.
Do you use the expensive blue or yellow pills to charge your sex life? Are you thinking about it? What if we can promise you the same results for less than $3 a pill? If you're paying $20 a pill for the other pills, you're getting taken to the cleaners. Our pills deliver the exact same results for less than $3. You'll save more than $16 a pill for the same results. And right now, radio callers will get 44 blue or yellow pills for $120 with free discreet shipping. You can save more than $700 off pharmacy prices. Charge your sex life now and save a ton of money. Call now and get your 44 pills and save over $700 and qualify for free shipping. Stop overpaying and call right now.
800-296-1289. 800-296-1289. 800-296-1289. That's 800-296-1289.
Are you tired of paying high prices for TV channels you don't watch? Of course you are. You want to watch and pay for the channels you like. Now you can take back control of your TV with Dish's FlexPack. Get over 50 of America's favorite channels for just $39.99 per month, and then add the channel packs that you want. And your TV price won't go up for 2 years, guaranteed. Plus, when you call today, you'll get free standard installation in up to 6 rooms and a free HD DVR upgrade. Need more channels? Dish offers loaded channel lineups from $54.99 per month, featuring over 190 channels, and HBO is included for a full year. And for a limited time, GoDish will give you a $100 prepaid Visa card when you sign up and mention offer code GIFT100. Call now, 800-795-5573, 800-795-5573, 800-795-5573.
Packages, prices, and promotions subject to change. Gift card courtesy of GoDish.com. Call for details.
Welcome back to Blowin Smoke. Ladies and gentlemen, AJ with you. Pleasure to have you. We're talking about the idea of enlightenment and how that term and how we're supposed to react to it is used against us by the people on the left, in the Democrat Party, the liberals, the socialists, the communists, the Marxists, whatever you want to call them, the people who now, as of August 2017, at least appear to come down on the side of peace through violence, at least appear to be in support, or at least not outwardly against groups like Antifa and BLM and the Black Panther groups, the anarcho-communist groups that want to, well, achieve peace, whatever they define peace as, through violence. It's absolutely asinine. It's ridiculous. I mentioned that before. We know that. All of us rational, reasonable, coping people recognize how ridiculous the idea of peace through violence is. Peace through strength, completely different thing. Peace through strength works to avoid violence by being strong in the first place so you don't get challenged. It's the same idea with, that freedom we have to defend ourselves and to own property and to not be subject to unlawful search and seizure, so on and so forth, the Bill of Rights. That's what we left off with the last segment, talking about how true enlightenment is what our forefathers put down in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the framework for our governance of ourselves, what we were guaranteed here as our rights. That is enlightenment. Enlightenment, because the way I define it is this: that is the only way to practice true enlightenment, by giving the human individual the opportunity to become whatever it will become. And that includes all of the negative downside. That includes that part of that side of the spectrum that we abhor. Whether it's that person who decides that they're a white supremacist and they shout horrible things at a protest, or you become the other extreme, you go to, maybe you become some kind of clergyman and you spend your life reaching out to your community and helping those in need. The spectrum of human being is the subject of what we think of as enlightenment, coming to understand the human being, our lives, what our trends are, our tendencies are. What is that human being? Enlightenment plays a big role in that. And so the freeing of, the allowing to be, the giving all the opportunity possible to each individual human being is the act, the embodiment of enlightenment, and it is in our Constitution and Bill of Rights. The fact that we have a group of people, I guess it's just a tactic. They want to come off as elite and smarter, and they're so smug and condescending, most liberals and leftists, when they're speaking. They're using a tactic to try to, bludgeon us verbally and with ideas and words to become subservient, to serve their needs, their goals, to give them the power and the influence. But it's not working anymore. And that's a great, great thing. But what also isn't working, and hasn't for a long time, is our education system. And the reason that I say that is because the only way, at least in my opinion, and I think what was laid out for us and what was meant and intended by our forefathers, I'm totally giving my own opinion here, but the level of education, the level of knowledge, the level of enlightenment that an individual can achieve in a free society makes more likely, if not most likely, that that individual will become a peace-loving, freedom-honoring, good neighbor, citizen, and patriot. They will choose that through education because they've come to know, through reading, writing, and arithmetic, the things that they need to know to expand their mind past those kinds of myopic catchphrases and control-seeking ideologies, that you learn to recognize things for what they are, instead of buying the rhetoric and the marketing and the BS PR from people who want to take your money and take your freedom and control your life. You become capable of recognizing it. People aren't able to take advantage of you that way. But that's why it's been such an important debate, what's going on in our education system here in this country, with that liberal leftist poisoning of it for decades, the poisoning of our bodies and our minds, whether it be through the pharmaceutical industry or it be through our public schools and colleges and universities. AJ, that sounds like a conspiracy theory. Maybe it is, but I recall my grade school days and junior high days, Ritalin was just being introduced. And it seems to me that every attempt by every generation to find the quick, easy way out of dealing one-on-one with people and kids and their problems, individuals, human beings, and the things that challenge them, has become more and more the desire. They want to find the silver bullet. Hell, here's a pill. Just take a pill, Mom. Here, Mom, your kid, you're having a problem. Feed him this pill. Oh, the side effects. I mean, you can turn on the television these days and see class action lawsuits that if you or your child took a pill and suffered these side effects, join the lawsuit, get money, get cash, blah, blah, blah. There has been a propensity to look for the easy way out in dealing with educating our youth in this country for a long, long time. And I don't believe that I am the only one that believes or would submit that we can identify as one of the root causes how and to what level we have been educating our youth. The fact of the matter is that leftism, communism, socialism, statism, all of that stuff has become, well, what is the norm and openly accepted throughout our education system. It's worked its way into our local and community schools through the Department of Education and through that federal level trickle-down effect. And of course, it's worked its way into our universities and colleges right alongside it and become, those are now the bastions of strength for those movements of liberalism, leftism, hate speech, safe spaces, triggering all of these things that we see as the deterioration of our freedoms, our society, our culture, our history, our heritage. We find ourselves living in a world where the strongest bastions of opposition to our way of life are found in our system of education. that are responsible for teaching the young people amongst us what to think. That's what it's turned into. It used to be about teaching them how to think, but it isn't that way anymore. That is not what is happening. I would guess that humans these days, if you've been born since 1980, you probably had your last original thought when you were 12. Oh, AJ, how could you say that to me? Well, that's the challenge of enlightenment, isn't it? That's the challenge of perspective and understanding. That's why we use the word red pill, the phrase red pill, being red pilled. It's about being able to identify and accept all of these things that we trusted and thought we believed and thought were true, and recognizing that they're all false and fake. And that's just it. That's what's happened. And they achieve it by omission. They achieve it by spin. They achieve it by moral equivalence, confirmation bias, and downright dishonesty, by teaching us to place our feelings and our emotions and our emotional responses and our anxieties higher and more important than facts and reality and honestly right and wrong. And it's a challenging thing to discuss because there is such a diversity of thought and a diversity of religion and a diversity of community and culture and belief. That's why I think that saying something like our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, our forefathers got it right, our forefathers were indeed the enlightened ones, because their intent, in my opinion, was to create a society and a culture and an environment to live in where it's okay for that diversity of thought and belief and the difference in opinion, the difference in practice and heritage and tradition would be not only acceptable and tolerated, but celebrated, and coexistence amongst us, at least on those larger macrocosmic spectrums, would be fine. There'd still be those bar fights, there's still the reality of relationships and getting along and being a person and living a life, but we're not fearing the Gestapo. We're not fearing the SS. We're not fearing the government. We are not shrinking violets whenever someone with a badge shows up. We're not doomed to an eternity in a slave labor camp by a judge's gavel because we didn't say the right thing at a party rally. You see what I'm saying? It's that idea of being able to embrace and cope and deal with and mature to the level where we understand that things just aren't ever going to be as easy as we wished, as we hoped, that folks aren't going to behave in ways that are going to be beneficial to themselves and their community most of the time. It's about really ourselves and what we're doing with it. And that's been twisted. It's become yourself and how are you trying to change the world? How are you trying to change someone else's behavior? How are you trying to affect the people around you? And that to me is just the opposite of enlightenment. Because when we start down that road of enlightenment and we start to gain understanding, we naturally seek out other experiences and other information and different ways of thinking. I think you understand where I'm going with this, but to suggest or to accept that someone like a Michael Moore or Nadal, the lady from Missouri, the senator that had the desire for our president's demise, all of these folks, Sally Kohn, Pelosi, you name them, Chelsea Handler, Madonna, Susan Sarandon, all the rest of them, they're no better than anybody else. And to think that they have some kind of enlightenment, to think that they are somehow deeper thinkers than the rest of us, and that they have our best interests at heart in their efforts to control and affect us and change us and correct us, it just can't survive anymore. We have to call them out and say, no more. You're no one's big sister other than your little sister. You're no one's mommy other than your kids. You're no one's controller. You're no one's better. You're no one's mentor other than those who would choose to allow you to be. These folks, this movement, this Democratic Party, the left in our country, is showing us just the worst side of the very thing that we're talking about, humanity and the lack of enlightenment. We'll be back with more after this. This is Blowin Smoke with AJ Gaynor on the Talk America Radio Network.
The following message is brought to you by Health Markets, your first choice when you need health insurance for your small business. Do you offer health insurance to your employees? Call us now and see if you can save money. Do you want to offer vision and dental to your employees? Call us. Do you think you're paying too much for your current health insurance? Call us. Do you want somebody else to do all the legwork and search thousands of health plans from over 180 health insurance companies nationwide? Call us. We're Health Markets, and thanks to a little-known solution, we could help your business save thousands of dollars on health insurance costs and save your employees money too. Our service is free. Don't miss the great savings. Call now.
800-472-5145. 800-472-5145. 800-472-5145. That's 800-472-5145.
Health Markets Insurance Agency is DBA of InSphere Insurance Solutions, Inc., licensed in all states. Product availability varies.
Welcome back to Blowin Smoke, ladies and gentlemen. AJ with you. Boy, time flies. We're talking about enlightenment today and how, the liberal left, the Democrat Party, they claim to hold the high ground there in being the most enlightened, the elite, the betters, the leaders, the ones who should decide for us on everything, basically, from what we drive, the fuels we use, to the books that we read, to the religions that we practice or don't, and all of the above, right on down the list. How much sugar we take in, salt, all of those things. We know that. Over all of these years, over the decades, we've learned there's no aspect of the human being that the liberals, the left, the Democrat doesn't want to try to legislate and control and regulate. It's just a fact. That in of itself should let us know immediately that they are the opposite. Their policies are the opposite of enlightened. Their ideology is the opposite of enlightenment. It can never be achieved when their enemy, their challenge, their road bump, their mountain to climb is society, is human being. It's that none of them ever come out and put it in so simple terminology, but that's why I'm here. And it's interesting, folks. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I feel like we talk about subjects here when it is this effort to understand and have perspective on the arguments that we're having, the clash that we're seeing between our political parties and the population, really, at least it's how it's presented to us, the division that we experience here in the U.S. I feel like we're ahead of the curve here. I really do. We've talked about the value of the human life. We talk about, as I have today, these ideas of enlightenment or truth or good and evil, morality. Why? What the Democrats and the left and the progressives, the socialists, the sadists, the list of who and what they are, because they openly claim to be, what threat they possess, why they're wrong, why they are not the ones that we should be looking to. And quite frankly, I believe that quite a few, if not most, of the voting public, illustrated by Trump's presidency, think the same way. We didn't get the perfect person to be president of the United States. We didn't win the lottery. Where we got our Achilles when we needed to. He is who we are stuck with and who we had to choose. I've said it openly. He got my vote, and I would do it again because none of the others were the right person for the job, and we weren't given. Reality didn't present to us the optimal figures to choose from, but we still have to continue and we still have to move forward and keep going at this desire or challenge of forming a more perfect union. We know, and what I try to stress on this show, is that the left, the Democrats, that part of our population, they have no interest in improving our situation, in making a more perfect union. It's not in the cards for them. And they've come right out and told us, Antifa, saying if you believe in the Constitution, you're not welcome in Boston. They said it. It's their own words. Look, if we're the type of people who argue in favor of accepting Iran's rhetoric against the West and what they say openly, if we're in the practice of accepting what North Korea says about us and what they're going to do, if we're in all the other situations supposed to accept at face value when someone is telling us that we're their enemy, we should accept it just as well when it's our neighbor who decides that they're going to help fund Antifa or help fund BLM. I'm not saying that they become our enemy and we're at war. I'm saying that they have to be defeated. And if we're going to talk about enlightenment, if any of us are going to position ourselves and believe that we have some enlightened view of what's going on, initiating or using violence, thinking of it or aggression as a tool at this point in this scenario, it's the opposite of enlightenment. It can't happen. There is the only honorable way, which is through education. And that's not re-education. It's not forced education. It's simply again and again presenting the ideas and the facts to people and hoping that eventually something clicks for them. There's no other way around it. We don't have quick fixes for any of the things that we're arguing about or we're facing. Whether it is the liberal poisoning of our society through the Democrat Party, or it's disease, or it's income inequality, or any of the perceived difficulties that we face in this nation. Aggression, violence, assaulting, a war on, like we have the war on drugs or the war on this or the war on that. None of those things fit into that context of there being enlightenment present. I mentioned before, our biggest challenge is finding a way to engage and what was the words? How did I phrase it? Oh, here it is. It's our ability to engage and become a part of and be aware of the reality that we inhabit. The way that I see that as being that means that there's going to be very few people we can trust. We're going to have to be ready and prepared at all times for things to happen that we would never have guessed or would have hoped for. And that we have to accept that our own situation, our own existence, our own endeavors, our efforts, our family, our friends, our close circle of our social network, that's what matters. And instead of trying to force on others what it is that we need for them to think or do or believe, it's not about force. It's about example. It's about education. It's about the sharing of information and ideas, and then the example of how they work. And that's something, in all of the notes that I took before I started the show today, I spent a little time writing down why it is I come down as a conservative or Republican, or my worldview is what it is. And I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but there's this little, I'm going to call it a pull quote. It's an unpublished writing that I did, but I'm going to pull a quote from it. Through my upbringing and my time in my youth and to about the age of 15, 16, 17, I was around the church. My father went to Bible school. He became a pastor. He spent several years as a pastor, and before that I was in church, and any time after that, I spent lots of time in church. I came to recognize that the concepts of morality, at least according to Christianity and what I grew up in, the concepts of morality are real not because, and they matter and they play a role in our lives, not because the scriptures in the Bible have to be true, factual, 100% black and white events that actually took place or accounts, but because those accounts, those scriptures illustrate concepts and ideas that the more we learn about history and humanity, we see that those concepts have proved themselves sound over the generations. Things like the Golden Rule, the Ten Commandments, the Seven Deadly Sins. I've said before, to me religion is really a device that that is used to turn us into citizens, to neighbors, to patriots, to husbands and wives and fathers and sisters and brothers and aunts and uncles and so on and so forth, cousins, all of the above. It's about creating citizens, individuals, people, humans, capable of coexisting with one another. That is the point and the idea, in my opinion, that is religion, what it is, what role it plays, and why it plays the role that it does. It is to help us become neighbors, to help us avoid that kind of dark ages world that existed for so long in our history. I know there are a lot of folks who would disagree and say that religion is responsible for those, and I get that argument, and I totally understand where you're coming from on that. But as I pointed out in many shows before, Christianity, the Western religions, they're the only ones who allow their believers, their followers, to question, to doubt, to move outside of the confines of the dogma of that belief system and still retain their rights and their freedoms and their lives and livelihoods. That is the most important aspect of this, that Christianity, the Western religion, ended up being a malleable, changeable evolving or evolvable force and ideology and doctrine, whereas the rest seem to have lagged behind in that sense. And so here we are. Even if you don't believe that literally that one day, a couple thousand years ago, Jesus walked on water, you don't have to appreciate and take from the history of him and what is written about him and see how it can benefit an individual in their own path that they're walking in their own lives. It's nothing more than that. To understand that doesn't require sending cash to Jimmy Swaggart. It doesn't require going to church every Sunday, but it does teach us and then cause us to require of ourselves a different approach to being fellow citizens and neighbors and husbands and wives and sisters and brothers and daughters and blah, 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 all of the above, how to be. And that is why it's so important that we protect and retain what we have here in the West and what we have here in the United States against these enemies, because no matter how much elitism they might shove down our throats, how much compassion and emotionality and knee-jerk ideology they might shove at us and browbeat us with, they can never overcome the ideas of the golden rule. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal. These inalienable rights that were set down for us in our Constitution and Bill of Rights because of the enlightenment of our forefathers. Enlightenment indeed. Following the Constitution, protecting it, honoring it, that is enlightenment in our time, in my opinion. It's time for a book to shove in your skull before we wrap it up. I'm going to do some Asimov, some Isaac Asimov. I'm one of the greats. Obviously, I would be redundant in spending any time on praise for this author because it has all been said and it is all known. This book, though, is one you might not be as familiar with. I think I featured it before, but I want to feature it again. It's called The Gods Themselves by Isaac Asimov, and briefly it's about kind of an alternate reality or future, or the book's old enough it could be taking place in our years, 2017 and beyond, but it's about the discovery of an unlimited energy source by our highly advanced science community. And it's about the consequences thereof, both good and bad, and what ends up being the reality of that discovery. And it's one you don't expect. And it's one that teaches us about being careful and about not blindly following and accepting consensus, public opinion, pop culture, the trends, the zeitgeist, all of those things. Helps us avoid becoming part of the mob, which is something I touched on last week. Thanks so much for tuning in. It is Talk America Radio, the fastest growing, the dominant force in conservative talk radio in this country. We appreciate having you. I hope you'll stay tuned. So much more coming from so many other hosts. Such a great family of shows here, so stay tuned. And until next time, be safe. And by the way, South Texas, I feel for you. I hope I've been through what you're going through. I hope everybody's okay. I hope that it's less damaging and impactful than here on this Friday, Saturday of August that could be right now that we're looking at. So my thoughts are with you, my families, and everyone, and stay safe. And until next time, bye, Earth.